Welcome to the English Effect. If you want to master the nuances of the language and sound more natural, make sure to like this episode, share it with a friend, and hit that subscribe button.
Because today we are getting into a deep dive on something that, honestly, I notice tripping people up all the time.
Oh, absolutely. You know that exact feeling when you're speaking English, and you are totally in the zone.
Yeah, the words are just flowing.
Right. The rhythm is there, you feel incredibly articulate, and then suddenly, right in the middle of a sentence, you hit a tiny two-letter word and you completely freeze.
The dreaded mid-sentence panic. I mean, it happens to almost everyone learning the language.
It really does. And it happens because these tiny words, they carry so much structural weight. You're trying to schedule a business meeting and your brain just halts. Is it in Monday?
Monday, on
Yeah.
Monday. And by the time you actually guess the right word, the moment of fluency is completely gone. Native speakers just seem to use these prepositions flawlessly without a single thought. But for anyone else, choosing the right preposition of time is, well, it's like stepping into a minefield.
It is. And today, we are fixing that. We aren't just going to give you a textbook list to memorize, because we all know that just doesn't work when you are actually speaking in real time.
No, it fails immediately under pressure.
Exactly. So our mission for this deep dive is to tear down those traditional grammar rules and replace them with mental models, frameworks that you can actually visualize. Before we get into the complex linguistic history of why English is so stubborn, we have to start with the fundamental building blocks of time.
Right, pinpointing exactly when something happens. And the most effective mental model for this is the time pyramid.
The time pyramid. Okay, I love this concept from our source material.
Yeah, specifically, it's an inverted time pyramid. If you can picture this shape in your mind, just visualize it, you will solve a vast majority of your preposition problems. So imagine a pyramid, but upside down.
Got it.
The base, the widest, broadest part, is at the very top. And then it narrows down to a sharp, precise point at the bottom.
I always kind of thought of it like a camera zoom lens. At the very top, the widest part of that inverted pyramid, we have the word in.
Yes, exactly.
And, by definition, in means being enclosed or situated within a broad period of time, like a month or a year. This is for your wide landscape shots.
Yeah.
Big, general, expansive periods.
We are talking about centuries, decades, years, seasons, and months. Because these are large containers of time, you are physically situated in them.
Right. So you launch a new product in 2024.
Or you look at market trends in the 80s. You take a vacation in the summer. Your quarterly review is in March. The chronological boundary is just super wide.
You are zoomed out as far as you can go. But then obviously, we need to get a little closer. We slide down one level on our inverted pyramid and things get a bit more specific. The lens zooms in. Here is where we find the middle tier and the preposition on.
Right, and on basically narrows the focus. We've moved from the vast container of a year or a month down to specific days and dates. Because on means being attached to a surface or in time, indicating specific days and dates. It implies a calendar block that an event rests upon.
Okay, so I will see you on Friday.
Exactly.
Or the deadline is on March 15th. The markets are closed on New Year's Day. It is always attached to a single day.
Precisely. And then we zoom in all the way. We reach the very bottom, the sharpest, most precise point of our pyramid, and that is at.
The absolute macro detail.
Yeah. By definition, at is used for pinpointing an exact moment or clock time. Most commonly, specific milestones.
So like the conference call begins at 3:30 p.m.
Or I am speaking to you at the moment. You are hitting a specific coordinate on the clock.
In, on, at. Wide, medium, precise. Container, surface, coordinate. I mean, it makes perfect logical sense.
It does. Right.
But I do have to challenge this model slightly because, well, English loves to betray its own logic. When I was looking through some of the linguistic analyses we pulled for today's deep dive, there are some really glaring exceptions.
Oh, there always are.
For instance, why do we say I drink coffee in the morning but I go to sleep at night? Morning and night are both general periods of the day. The pyramid kind of seems to collapse right there.
It's a very fair challenge. The easy answer is that at night is just an idiom, a fixed expression. But the reason it's a fixed expression is actually fascinating. It comes down to how speakers of Old and Middle English conceptualize their days.
Right, really?
Yeah. Back in agricultural societies, time was measured by daylight. The daylight hours, morning, afternoon, evening, they were the containers of productive time. You did things in them. Nighttime, however, wasn't viewed as a container of time at all.
Because it was just dark.
Exactly. It was viewed as a point of darkness, just a sharp boundary between days.
Oh, that makes so much sense. So because they didn't view night as a period of action, they used the coordinate preposition at, like a specific point.
Exactly. Even though our modern lives have completely changed and we now do plenty of things in the nighttime, the grammatical structure calcified centuries ago, it's basically a historical artifact preserved in modern speech.
That explains so much. It's not just a random exception, it's a reflection of ancient daily life. But there is another mechanical trap here that catches even B2 or C1 level speakers. It's the trap of redundancy.
Oh yes, the disappearing preposition. When you use specific modifiers like next, last, every, or this, the preposition completely drops out of the sentence.
Right, because you want to say, let's schedule the meeting on next Friday. It feels like it should be correct because Friday demands on according to our pyramid.
But grammatically, you must drop the beyond. It's just, let's schedule the meeting next Friday. Or
Right.
we expanded the department last summer, not in last summer.
And the mechanism behind that is actually quite elegant. Words like next, last, every, and this are what linguists call determiners. They act as pointing words. If I say next Friday, I'm already pointing directly at a specific coordinate in time.
Right, you don't need extra directions.
Exactly. Adding in on or at is like typing out a full website URL into a Google search bar. It's just redundant. The determiner is already doing the heavy lifting of locating the time, so the preposition gets out of the way.
That's a great way to think about it. The language really prioritizes structural efficiency there.
So the time pyramid is our go-to framework for isolated points in time. But business and life, they aren't just a series of single isolated moments. Time stretches out. We endure things. We work on long-term projects.
Right, we need to express ongoing action.
Exactly. How do we talk about time that has a continuous duration?
Well, for that, we set the pyramid aside entirely and introduce a new mental model, the timeline. Imagine a straight, horizontal line stretching from the past through the present and straight into the future.
Okay, I have a timeline in my head.
When we deal with durations on this timeline, we rely heavily on three specific prepositions, for, since, and from. And they each interact with that line in a fundamentally different way. So let's look at for.
To me, for is like pulling out a physical measuring tape.
Yes, because for means measuring duration, showing how long an action lasts. You are literally measuring the length of an event to see how long it is.
Right. That is the exact semantic function of the word. It answers the question, how long? It measures pure duration regardless of when it actually happened. So you have been waiting for over an hour.
Or the server was down for 3 days.
They operated in London for a decade. You are taking that measuring tape and just laying it across a segment of your timeline.
Okay, so if for is a measuring tape, then since is entirely different. Since is referring to the starting point of an action that continues up to the present.
So it's like taking a pushpin and sticking it into one specific date on a calendar to mark an origin point.
Yes, since points strictly to the starting block, but there is a crucial, non-negotiable mechanical rule here that trips up so many non-native speakers. Since is used for an action that started at that pushpin moment in the past and is still happening right now.
So we have been developing this software since Q2.
Exactly. The development began in Q2 and you are still currently developing it.
Which brings up a very common grammatical error. If the action started in the past but is happening now, what verb tense is required? I mean, can I say, I'm living here since 2020?
No, and this is where the grammatical mechanics really matter. You cannot say, I am living here since 2020, since almost exclusively demands a perfect tense, usually the present perfect or present perfect continuous.
Ah, so it has to be, I have been living here since 2020.
Correct. Think about why tenses exist. The simple present I am is just a snapshot. It only captures right now. But since requires a bridge that connects the past to the present.
That makes a lot of sense.
The present perfect tense, have been, was literally designed by the English language to be that bridge. It's not a snapshot, it's a video recording that started in 2020 and is still rolling. If you use a snapshot tense with a bridge preposition, the sentence mechanically breaks.
They're like interlocking gears. You need the bridge tense to support the bridge preposition. Okay, what about from?
From operates as a boundary marker. It indicates the specific starting point of a bounded time frame, and it is almost always paired with to or until. If for is a measuring tape, and since is a single pushpin, then from and to are like two brackets.
They isolate a specific closed time frame on your timeline, like the store is open from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m.
Exactly. A clear beginning and a clear end. You are fencing off a section of the timeline completely separated from the past and the future.
All right, so we've conquered single points in time with the pyramid. We've measured stretching time with the timeline. But here's where the syntax gets really tricky. What happens when two things are happening at the exact same time?
Multitasking or, parallel universes of time?
Yeah. This is where your ability to recount events in English goes from basic to highly dynamic. When you want to layer events, you need the prepositions during and while.
And this is exactly where the intuitive logic of a language learner hits a brick wall. Because semantically, during and while seem to mean the exact same thing. They both basically translate to at the same time as something else.
So why does English insist on having two different words for the identical concept?
Because it's not about semantics at all. It's entirely about syntax. It's about the structural architecture of what comes immediately after the preposition.
Wait, so if I use during, I'm basically pointing to a static object or an event, like a noun.
Exactly. During means throughout the course of a specific event or noun. It takes an action and places it inside a broader event. So the CEO kept checking her phone during the presentation.
Or the fire alarm went off during the film. The presentation and the film are nouns. They are the overarching events that contain the smaller action.
You've got it. So during is like pointing at a photograph of the event. It sets the backdrop. But what about while?
Well, while means at the exact same time that another action is happening, requiring a subject and a verb. So it's followed by a full clause.
Right. And grammatically, a clause means you have a subject and a verb. You are introducing an active, ongoing action.
So I definitely can't say while the film.
No, because the film has no verb. You would have to say, the fire alarm went off while we were watching the film. We is the subject, we're watching as the verb. You have two complete actions running on parallel tracks.
I see. So during is pointing at a photograph.
Yeah.
But while is pressing play on a mini-movie inside the sentence. During my vacation versus while I was vacationing.
That is a fantastic way to put it. But there is a major structural trap here concerning the future tense. When we talk about parallel actions happening in the future, it is incredibly tempting to use the future tense marker will right after a while.
Like, I will review the documents while I will be on the flight. I mean, logically that tracks. Both actions haven't happened yet. They're both in the future.
It tracks logically, but it violates the rule of linguistic efficiency. The rule states that the clause immediately following while must be in the present tense, even if the context is the future. So you have to say, I will review the documents while I'm on the flight.
Why does it reject the second will?
Because of the first part of the sentence, I will review, already establishes the chronological context for the entire thought. The listener already knows we are in the future. Adding another will inside the while clause is like wearing two watches to tell the same time.
It's clunky and redundant.
Exactly. The language strips it away to maintain a smooth flow.
Okay, we have the pyramid, the timeline, and the parallel tracks of during and while. These are intensely practical tools, but I really want to shift gears and look under the hood. Why is English so rigid about these specific words? Where did these strict rules even come from?
To understand that, we have to wade into the linguistic history of English grammar. First, you have to understand that prepositions form what linguists call a closed lexical category.
A closed category, meaning the VIP list is full, no new entries allowed.
Essentially, yes. Think about nouns or verbs. They are an open class. We invent new ones every single day as culture evolves. Google became a verb. Podcast became a noun. But we almost never invent new prepositions. The ones we have in, on, at, for, from are an ancient, inherited set of structural blueprints.
So because they are ancient, grammarians must have been fighting over how to standardize them for centuries.
Oh, absolutely. Historical records show that early English grammarians like John Drury in 1434 and William Bullicar in 1586 were desperately trying to pin English prepositions down into strict rules. But they made one massive error.
What was it?
They were obsessed with Latin. They viewed Latin as the perfect, pure, divine language. So they tried to force English, which is a messy, flexible Germanic language, to obey Latin syntactical rules.
Trying to force Latin rules onto English is like trying to use an Apple charger on an Android phone. I mean, the structural ports just don't match up, but these grammarians were trying to jam it in anyway.
That is the perfect analogy. Latin is a highly inflected language, so words change their endings to show their function.
Right, whereas English relies heavily on word order.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So trying to map Latin rules onto English prepositions caused centuries of unnecessary chaos in classrooms. It wasn't until 1924 that a brilliant Danish linguist named Otto Jespersen came along and really challenged the whole system.
What did Jesperson do differently?
Well, he stopped trying to put English words into Latin boxes. He pointed out that English prepositions actually overlap significantly with adverbs and conjunctions, depending entirely on how they are used in a sentence.
Give me an example of that overlap.
Take the word down. If I say, he walked down the stairs, the word down is acting as a preposition, showing the relationship between the walking and the stairs. But if I say, he fell down, there is no object. Down is acting as an adverb, modifying the verb fell.
Oh, interesting.
Right. Jesperson realized that the function of these words is fluid based on context, which was a radical departure from the rigid Latin-based rules of the past.
Which brings me to the ultimate, most infamous grammar rule. The one every strict teacher has drilled into our heads. Is it actually illegal to end a sentence with a preposition? What if I say, who did you go with, instead of with whom did you go?
Preposition stranding. This is the direct result of that Apple charger and an Android phone problem. In Latin, it is syntactically impossible to strand a preposition at the end of a sentence. Therefore, 18th century grammarians decided it must be illegal in English too.
But it feels so natural to say, who did you go with? I mean, with who did you go? Makes me sound like a Victorian ghost.
And modern linguistics entirely agrees with you. Despite centuries of prescriptive grammar teachers insisting it's incorrect, descriptive linguists, and officially the Merriam-Webster Dictionary, have stated that preposition stranding is perfectly standard, acceptable English.
That is incredibly validating. The rule was basically a historical mistake based on the wrong language model.
Exactly. It's a prime example of how natural usage eventually overrules rigid artificial rulemakers. The natural flow of the Germanic language won out over the forced Latin structure.
So we've covered a massive amount of ground today. We started with the mid-sentence panic, that feeling of not knowing which structural joint to use.
And we've replaced that panic with functional architecture.
Right. You have the time pyramid for pinpointing moments. In for the wide container shots, on for the specific surfaces of days, at for the exact coordinates on a clock.
And you have the timeline for measuring duration. For is your measuring tape, since is your pushpin that demands a perfect bridge tense.
And you have the structural rules for parallel time. During takes a static noun, while launch is a mini-movie with a subject and verb.
And you know to avoid the traps. Drop the preposition before determiners like next and last. And keep your while clauses in the present tense, stripping away redundant future markers.
Mastering these tiny prepositions is really what separates good functional English from great fluent English. They're the invisible nails holding the vocabulary together. But before we wrap up, I want to touch on something truly profound about these words.
The spatial mapping. Yes, I love this concept.
When you really look at these prepositions of time in, on, at, from, you realize they aren't actually time words at all. They are spatial words, words we borrowed from the physical three-dimensional world.
It's one of the most fascinating concepts in cognitive linguistics. We literally talk about time as if it is a physical space.
Exactly. I am physically in a room, but I'm also chronologically in 2024. I place a laptop on the desk, but the deadline is on Monday. I walk from the office to the cafe, and I work from 9 to 5.
This is what cognitive scientists refer to as embodied cognition. Human beings cannot see, touch, or smell time. It is a completely invisible, abstract concept. Because our brains evolved to navigate the physical world, we struggle to process pure abstraction.
So, to understand time, we unconsciously map it onto physical space.
Yes. We pretend time is a physical box we can climb in, or a hard surface we can stand on, or a physical distance we can travel from.
It's incredible. It implies that we are physically walking through time, moving forward into the future.
And what's amazing is that not all cultures map it the same way. In English, we place the future in front of us and the past behind us. But the Aymara people in the Andes map it backward.
Like backward.
Yeah, because you can see what has already happened. The past is in front of them. The future, which is unknown and unseen, is mapped behind their backs.
That completely blows my mind. The prepositions we use aren't just grammar rules. They are the literal manifestation of how our brains construct reality.
Exactly. So the next time you find yourself pausing to choose between in, on, or at, just remember you are navigating a deeply ingrained spatial map of the universe.
The mid-sentence panic doesn't have to be a panic anymore. Now it's just a matter of selecting the right coordinate. I love that.
I highly encourage all of you listening to practice using these visual frameworks in your very next conversation. It really changes everything.
Absolutely. Thank you for exploring the linguistic deep end with us. Master the pyramid, measure the timeline, and let the prepositions do the heavy lifting. Make sure to like this deep dive, Share it with someone who loves language, and subscribe to the English Effect channel for more.
Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you on the next one.